back. Forgot to record this earlier, so let's record it now. Okay, so let's talk to each of the groups about whether or not you think, which word you think applies to Darl at the end of this book. So room number one, who's talking to me for this one? And let's all open up to Darl's last section if you're not there already, so that we can find the evidence for what they're saying too. Okay, room number one.
Which rooms were which? Because I didn't look at the names.
Oh yeah. All right, so room number one is Elise, Huck, Isaac, and Whitney.
Okay, we kind of talked about how his word kind of switches throughout the book because he tends to become a little bit more, loses a bit more of himself along the way to Bariati. So like at the beginning he was more eccentric, but by the end he was like kind of zany.
Zany is a word we didn't put up there. Okay, so he moves from eccentric to zany. That's super interesting. Kate, tell me about like why you chose those two words, especially, so eccentric I understand. Tell me why you think he moves towards this zaniness at the end.
We kind of discussed that because at the beginning he's like kind of like poetic, like over the top, but he's never like pushed it out. Like, but then as he goes on, Huck was saying like his family begins to turn on him almost in a sense in Darl's mind because they don't see what Darl's going through. So as he like does more kind of like manic things like burning down the barn, his family pushes him away farther, and that's what pushes him out there to be more zany.
Ah, that's so interesting. So the words you're using here are really spatial. Like you say, when he's eccentric, he's over the top, outside these bounds of normalcy, but not so much that we would have him committed, right? But then when you say zany is being sort of pushed out even further. So if we have this line of normalcy, Darl is being pushed further and further away. And what you're saying then is like, it's not Darl's fault that he's sort of losing control of his mind or losing control of reality or, you know, how he perceives reality. It's more that like the family is responding to his eccentricity with kind of like rejection, so that he's being pushed further and further out. So do you think that Darl actually changes by the end, or do you think that his family's reaction to him is what is changing?
I feel like it's his family's reaction, and I feel like by the end it's starting to change Darl, but I don't think we haven't seen enough in the end to really say Darl has changed.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because Cash recognizes this. I don't have your page numbers with me because I just have my Falling Apart book that you've seen. But in Cash's section, I'll just read it to you. He says, so he's thinking about like, was it a good idea that we shipped Darl off? And he says, sometimes I ain't so sure who's got era right to say when a man is crazy and when he ain't. Sometimes I think it ain't none of us pure crazy, and ain't none of us pure sane until the balance of us talks him that away. So it's like that idea that like by labeling him with certain terms or by seeing him in a certain way, that's what pushes the person into being pure crazy. It's like it ain't so much what a fellow does, but it's the way the majority of folks is looking at him when he does it. I think it's so interesting that this comes from Cash at the end. Cash kind of takes over the narration we're used to seeing Darl provide and the storytelling. And at the end here, Cash is like, I don't really know if he's crazy, but everybody else thinks he's crazy. And we need something to do with him or we're going to get in trouble for burning down Gillespie's barn. So if we punish Darl and we make him, I mean, he is the one who burned it down, but if we make him the scapegoat for everything that has happened that's made our family seem crazy, then we can return to normalcy. We can ship that crazy out, and then all the problems are kind of solved. Okay, let's talk to group two. That was Cecilia, Enoch, and Xander. What word did you guys give Darl?
Okay.
I kind of talked about, he was like, oh, sorry, were you gonna talk?
Go ahead. You talk.
Okay. Uh, we said he wasn't like a psychopath or like completely demented, but he was unhinged, like he didn't really know what was real.
Okay. Unhinged. So he's not demented, he's not a psychopath. And is this like kind of levels of the same thing? Is unhinged like a less extreme version of psychopath or demented?
Not extreme, it just kind of feels like a different word. Because psychopath is like you're nuts, you want to like, I don't know, destroy something, but unhinged is just like you don't know kind of what's real and you're not really in control of like what you see or hear.
Okay, good. So it's this lack of control that we're seeing in this last section. So everybody's open to that last section, right? Where Darl talks. It's like the third to last section of the book. Find, and this is for everybody, and I want everyone to do this in the chat box. Find one piece of evidence in that little section that Darl is out of control. But I'm going to say you can't use that he's talking in third person. One other piece of evidence, because I think third person is the most obvious piece. But what's something else that feels totally out of control in that last section? And write it in the chat box. This is for everybody. Dogs here. Yeah. Very good. Yes. Definite and imminent departure. All right, cool. Let's talk about the yes, 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 yeses first. So I think these are super, super interesting in this section. Darl's gone to Jackson. They put him on the train laughing, down the long car laughing, the heads turning like the heads of owls when he passed. What are you laughing at? I said. So again, we're like totally confused over who I is, who Darl is. Are these both coming from Darl's narration? Because it's labeled Darl in the book. So is this Darl talking, or is somehow Vardaman sort of seeped into his? Oh, Octavia's here. It's unclear, but then we get this yes, 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 yes afterwards. And in some ways, doesn't that feel like when Vardaman was kind of like self-soothing himself in the river section, where he's like, Darl is my brother, Darl is my brother, or even in the section right before this, it feels like that repetition is a kind of soothing quality, you know, almost like somebody sort of like rocking back and forth, yes, 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 you know. But there's also a kind of rhythm to it. And do you remember when Jewel, this is a long time ago, but in Jewel's section, he says, one lick more to describe the saw in the coffin? Yes, 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 yes. What does that sound like? I'm going to mute you, Octavia. Okay, it can sound like that saw again. And Whitney, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. It sounds like that chug of the train. Yes, 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 right? So it's like this like sound that he might be hearing that he's representing in words. And before in the book, Darl was really particular about naming everything that he saw and everything he heard and smelled and so on with like the most intense vocabulary. And yet here he's kind of like, we could think of him sort of devolving a little bit, or maybe just like sort of giving in to the impreciseness of that language, that like this is the sound I hear, and instead of describing it using like particular words so that I can like really figure it out, instead I'm just going to use language in this arbitrary way to like sound like the train. So that can be a sign that he's at least when you say unhinged, it's like he's at least becoming, it's almost like he's less in his head now. And he's more just like absorbing things outside of him. So that's, I think that repetition is super interesting there. And then you guys are talking about him, about the like way that he's sort of just like flitting around between different ideas. It's like they pulled two seats together so Darl could sit by the window to laugh. One of them sat beside him, the other sat on the seat facing him, riding backward. One of them had to ride backward because the state's money had a face on each backside and a backside to each face, and they are riding on the state's money, which is incest. What? Okay. A nickel has a woman on one side and a buffalo on the other, two faces and no back. I don't know what that is. So he's like, he's kind of he gets a little gross there. I don't need to explain what's gross about that, but he's sort of like thinking about how there's like a lot of circularity. There's a guy facing forward, a guy facing back, and they're kind of just like in this kind of like circle then. And he's got money with one side and the other, but you can flip it and it just keeps going around and around and around. And he's like thinking about all that stuff and sort of jumping around. And he's not thinking about how, oh, I'm about to go to an insane asylum. What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen to me? No, he's just having these like random thoughts. And he says, Darl had a little spyglass he got in France at the war. Had a woman and a pig with two backs and no face. I know what that is. Is that why you are laughing, Darl? And again, he's like being distracted. He's being distracted here by like really crude images. But he's being distracted and he's thinking back, it seems like, to his time in the war. This is the first time we've heard that Darl is a veteran, that he was in World War I. And this is the only evidence we really have of Darl's age, by the way. That's kind of how people know that he's like probably in his like mid-20s. And so we kind of like, is he sort of like obsessing then with his past, and why is he jumping around? And that feels unhinged for sure. Okay, tell me, group 3, you've been waiting patiently. Abby, Allie, and Ash. Which word did you guys choose?
So we did more like wacko or nuts, because it's like he's trying to find the words. It's like he's trying to figure out how to do this in a way that he hasn't been in this situation before, and if he has, he doesn't really know how to deal with it, because there's no one around him that he can like observe really carefully that he knows. So he's focusing on himself, which he like never does, and he starts freaking out.
So interesting. Okay. So yeah, it's like he still tries even when he's not there to say like, oh, and then my family is back there eating bananas, and they're sitting on the wagon, but it doesn't feel honest anymore. And by the very end, you're absolutely right. Here he is. Darl is our brother Darl, our brother Darl in a cage in Jackson. Like he's just so focused on him, and to have to be focused on that moment is like almost like when he's trying to fall asleep. It's like kind of evoking this crisis again. Why though the like terms of endearment? Because we talked about at the beginning how wacko and nuts are like things that a friend would call you, and they're not super serious. Why keep it kind of like on that level?
I don't know.
Anyone else in the group have an idea about that? Yeah, Allie?
I said that like this section kind of had like a dark humor to it, because if you see someone like laughing at themselves and then like saying yes, 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 like I would think that's kind of like scary, but also a little bit comical at the same time.
Yes, I absolutely think that dark humor is here. I think the book still feels very fondly about Darl, and we've seen him laugh before, and we don't see that necessarily as this danger to anybody. Okay, all of this being said though, if he's not totally Whitney says, I feel like he switches to third person to separate who he is sane from who everyone else thinks he is insane. That's fascinating. So it's like we maybe reading the book aren't fully convinced then that Darl is insane, and we might be more convinced by Cash's point that insanity really comes from the person who is judging you to be insane, you know. And think about, like, when we go back to our whiteboard, in fact, I'll pull it up because Octavia's here now. Look at all of those words for crazy. And I really think we barely scratched the surface. I usually, when I call people crazy, I'm always just like, if an idea is crazy, I'm like, that is wild. So wild would be another one. You know, there's all these different words we have for crazy. And here, like, what does that tell us about us? There's it's a tall tale. It's not real, but they say that, like, people in Alaska, they use the word Eskimos, which shows us that it's not real. But they say that people in Alaska have like 100 words for snow, you know, because this is what they are most familiar with. All right, that's not true, but it is illustrative of a concept that's really important in language, which is that when it's something you're very familiar with, you need a lot of words for it. And when it's something that is like really hard to pin down, you have a lot of words for it. So it's like this word crazy, it has all of these different words that we need to describe it. And partly that shows us, I think, that craziness is like a nebulous concept. There's all these different kinds and varieties of what we would consider crazy. But partly it might show us that we're all a little crazy sometimes. You know, isn't that a Joker quote? I'm not sure, from Batman. But it's like, it's true. It's like at any one moment, like, you could be out of your mind, you know, even just like dissociating or meditating or trying to fall asleep, or all of these different states of mind. There's so many different states. And so we have all of these different words to describe it. And maybe when we're reading here at the end, we are saying, yes, you've labeled Darl crazy, but which one of you in this book is not crazy? You know, isn't Ants a little bit crazy for like burying his wife and then immediately marrying the woman he got the shovels from? Isn't Dewey Dell a little crazy for giving up her brother because she's like so, you know, ashamed of this secret? And yet she's still pregnant at the end of this book. Like, everyone's going to find out soon. Isn't that a little crazy? Isn't Cash a little crazy for his obsession with the coffin? Like, why is Darl the one that we decide is the most crazy? Part of that is burning the barn down, of course. That's not a good thing to do. But in some ways, it's a little bit sane, because here they are, like, walking through the countryside with a dead, rotting body. And he's the only one who's like, look, Addie's dead. She's not going to care where you bury her. Let's get rid of this body, you know? Doing that in a barn with livestock and, you know, it's somebody's property. Yeah, that was not the right choice. But in some ways we can see how, I think Whitney used the word, how he was pushed there, you know? Ash, yeah.
I think that, like, in that way, like, he was the only sane person, because everyone doesn't want to look at the truth, so they just like kind of blame it all on him and be like, you can go away now, so our problem's fixed.
Yeah, and at the end, how they kind of just like return to where they were, minus an Addie and a Darl, but plus a new Mrs. Bundren. It does feel like they're like, okay, problems solved, you know, even though now Cash has this crazy broken leg, and you know, Dewey Dell is going to have a baby, and all of these things are actually not totally solved. They're just sitting around a record player listening to music, it sounds like. Okay, so that was a while to talk, so let's move on to something else. You guys did these timeline projects last time when I wasn't here. You worked on them, and I sent you an email that has the pictures of your timeline, and everybody else's. So I know Abby did hers at home, and Octavia did hers at home, and there was one other person I saw. And Enoch, I have yours that you did with Ethan. So I'm going to put you guys into groups just to talk about your timelines very quickly. So some of you will just be alone in your own breakout room, just thinking to yourself. these up. Octavia's is the PowerPoint. Brown paper and this one. Okay, it's hard for me to read the names. So it looks like we had Whitney, Allison Roberts, and Xander in a group. Is that right? Not if that's right. Okay, cool. So I'll put you guys into a room. You guys just have to bear with me here. This takes a second. Okay, and then we had on this brown construction paper, I am not sure who was working on the brown paper timeline. Oh, Isaac joined their group. Okay, cool. Let me put you in there. Awesome. Okay, and then the brown one, raise your hand again. It was Ash and Cecilia and Elise. Okay, awesome. Sign Ash, Cecilia, Elise. Okay. And then Allie, did you work on your own? I can't remember. Have you done it yet?
I just haven't done it yet, so maybe. I
Okay,
can.
cool. Then I'm gonna put you and Huck. Have you done it yet? No. Okay. I'm gonna put you and Huck in a room. And you guys are going to talk about how you would have completed this assignment if you had. Okay, so everybody's in a room, maybe alone based on who they did the assignment with and whether they were there that day. I'm just going to give you 2 minutes. You're going to talk about your timeline again. And again, I sent you an email with the picture of it. You're going to talk about your timeline and the choices that you made, and then you're going to decide who's going to tell me about your timeline. Because everybody's going to take a turn to sort of like talk us through the choices that they made for their timeline. All right, go ahead and go talk about it for a second. Oh, do you want to go outside? You want to go outside with Daddy? There you go. That's probably embarrassing when I recorded. Was my dog. Okay, Abby, you're gonna go first because I have yours pulled up, okay? Once everybody gets here. Okay.
In progress.
All right, just waiting on one person. Okay. So before we start talking about this shape of the story assignment, I want to show you sort of part of the purpose of this, what we're leading towards here. So you guys are going to be writing an essay about As I Lay Dying, of course, always an essay. And this is the assignment for that essay. So you're focusing on close reading. So I want you to only focus on a single section of the book. That makes it more manageable for sure, because you can really dig into the language of that section. But it also could be more challenging because I don't want you to use other evidence from the book. I only want you really focusing on that one section. So you could do Vardaman's My Mother is a Fish if you wanted to. You could write a whole paper about My Mother is a Fish, but I maybe wouldn't choose that one. I think I'd choose another one, but you be my guest if you want to. Anyway, so you're going to close read that single section, and your goal is to write a paper where the thesis is about Faulkner's idea about time. So part of doing the shape of the story assignment is to get you thinking about how Faulkner's not just thinking of time as this like cause and effect, time marches forward idea. Instead, he's thinking about the way that time can loop back, the way that the past can affect the present, and the present can kind of recreate what we think of the past, the way that time slows down or speeds up, the way that time can skip ahead or skip backwards. There's lots of different ways of looking at it. So you're going to make some kind of theme about time and use that one section to back it up. So this is sort of like what you're doing before I see you next time. Yep. Okay. I'm going to extend that one day because of our virtual stuff. I know you have a lot of stuff that you guys are doing online, and I'm giving 5th period Friday to work on it. And I'm not giving you guys that time. So we're going to push that. So it was originally due on Monday. We'll make it due Wednesday, because you guys will also have Pride and Prejudice. We're starting Pride and Prejudice. So you'll also have Pride and Prejudice reading kind of going along, and I'm going to push that. So you have a few more days for that, but it's coming up. So let's get everyone's ideas then about this timeline project so that you can kind of hear how other people are thinking about time or about the shape of the story. So we're going to do Abby's first. I'm going to share her picture. Okay. Go. And I want to like show you, so she's color coded it, right? So I can show you this part. All right, Abby, explain it to us.
Okay, so this project totally freaked me out, not gonna lie, because I'm not really that big of an abstract thinker, like in my opinion, I don't know. So it was kind of hard when Dr. Borg was all like, don't do it linear, and I was like, okay. And so I did like this big blob, and I just put things I associated together, and then I color coded it. So the gray, which has 2 shades, sorry, this is paper I made, it changes. Anyway, the gray is Addie's death and like the surrounding events. The blue is the river. Does that make sense? The green is, I have it right here, I'm reading it. Anyway, is sickness or troubles, like Addie getting sick or things surrounding that. And then the pink is other events that didn't really fit in any of the other categories. And I wasn't totally sure where they went in the story because they like were the past but appeared in the present or the future. So it's kind of weird. And then I just kind of did it in a general order of each thing where I think it would go.
Yeah, I love that. I love this idea that it exists in blobs. Because like for instance, like the river, all of this stuff, even though the family arrives at the river is sort of at the top, so there is a kind of linear quality to it, all of this stuff kind of happens at once, and it feels like it happens at once. And then you've got Cash breaks his leg, which feels like the ending of that scene, but it's kind of just this blob of events. Or like this part with Addie dying, we're not quite sure what's happening first or second, and so on. And so it's just sort of this blob of events. And if you can think about how these events are affecting each other, and I love that the colors are touching each other sometimes, but they really do kind of like exist in their own little sphere, and they kind of like move through the different blobs. So I don't believe you're a bad abstract thinker, because that really makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, cool. There's Abby's. Then let's look at Enoch's. I'm just going for the ones that I have up. So we'll share Enoch's now. All right, Enoch, tell us about yours.
Okay, what I did is we kind of branched off the story into like 4 different main parts. So we had one with Dewey Dell, one with like the smaller branches, Vardaman, and then one with Jewel and Cash and Darl. And so they kind of separated in that way by like by character, and then they all kind of connected back together when they hit the town, and then that's like the ending scene of the book, and then they all kind of separated again at the end. And so we kind of made this shape into a fish, kind of representing how everything revolves around Addie. And when Addie died, and it kind of ended the whole family organization, and that's what caused all this chaos. So yeah, we made it into a fish, and there was one thing on there that I can't remember what it was, but we couldn't really fit it into one category.
It's Whitfield holds the funeral service for Addie. Yeah,
he was kind of not really connected with the story. It was just kind of more about Addie.
yeah, exactly. It's like Whitfield has this this presence because he has this relationship to Jewel, but nobody in the family can really figure out how Whitfield fits into it. Yeah, I love the fish. I love the eyeball and the bubbles. But what I really like too is that Addie gets sick is kind of like the connecting point over here, but you've got this circular quality. So it's like it all moves forward, but everybody is separated, and it moves forward until people come back together again, like you said. And Darl goes this way, all the Darl stuff is over here, and the family goes this way. And because they separated at the end, it creates this clear picture of the fish. Okay, now we understand Mom. And you've chosen Vardaman's version of Mom to understand, but like I think this could work if it was a picture of a horse or a picture of a coffin. Like either way, it's like now we all agree this was Mom, we're done with Mom, and now we can kind of move on with our lives, you know? Okay, good job. I like the fish. Okay, who's next? Brown construction. Get it facing the right way, the right size. Teachers always have to narrate what they're doing on their side. Okay, so tell me about this timeline.
Okay, so it's complicated, so I'll try and, summarize it. But ours, we kind of did it backwards, so it goes from right to left in order of events. And then we also did it with like separate characters. So if I can read it, then the top one is Jewel, and then all of his events are connected by that bold arrow, because we felt like he was just like kind of not just a presence, because that feels like insulting to Jewel, but like it just felt like he was just like there, and he got done what he needed to get done. So yeah, and then we had the little like wavy line, and that was for Darl. And as like the story, as the timeline goes on, it gets like progressively more squiggly which is like to represent that he's like going insane. And then we had Doodle as like the dashed line, and we felt like that represented her because she's kind of like with herself, but she's not, because she's got like a baby now, and so that connects her. And then Cash, we made just like a very like narrow and straightforward line, because we felt like he's just like very to the book. And then Vardaman, on some of the papers you can see like little doodles, because we felt like that was kind of childish, and we felt like he doesn't really like have language to describe what he's feeling and his emotions, and so we used illustrations to describe that instead. And then we have Addie as like her own like separate thing, but she's not connected by any like lines or arrows or anything, because we felt like she's in the story, but she doesn't have her own like timeline in the story. And then like the bottom timeline is the family as like a unit, and it's connected by chains, and then as you can't see it in the picture, but as like the chains go on, then they slowly start to have like links missing or links that are broken, because we felt like as the story progressed, then the family just kind of like deteriorated. And then down at the bottom we have the family buries Addie, and then upside down we have Anne's remarries, because we felt like it was both like a backwards ending to the story, and it was just like a restarting of the entire story again. And I think we got everything. Some of the characters are like intertwined and stuff, so you'll see one that's like kind of like, I don't know, slanted, and that's connecting Darl and Dewey Dell and their storylines. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, good. Yeah, and it seems then that's fascinating, because it seems then as they're all separate, this this family link stays strong, but then when they start to connect in some ways is when the family link might start to unravel a little bit, or it's missing links. Like, it's interesting that the Cash says that Darl and Dewey Dell always had a close connection, but when that connection gets too close, when it seems to invade on their individuality, like their personal space and their sense of secrecy, is when the family ultimately breaks apart. But yeah, I really like how you've done this Addie and Ants thing down at the bottom with this kind of like explosion. Like, it's just like, yep, it's gonna go back to the beginning now. Okay, good job. Let's do, where's the, there it is. Okay, I'm very curious about this one because it looks very complicated as well. And you tell me if you want it to be facing this way. So do you want it vertical or should we do it horizontal?
Just leave it how it is. You can't really read it either way.
Okay. All right. Tell me about this one.
So I guess ours is a little bit linear, but mostly we were talking about like how everybody feels about different things. So it's like Addie gets sick and everybody kind of takes a dip there. But then like as she is starting to die, she's like glad about it because she's a psychopath. So she like goes up, then she dies, and then at the very end of hers, it's like it goes up a little bit because she got buried and then the whole time. At the end of Dartles, we just kind of went nuts with that one because he's crazy. Yeah. And like all of his is like weird colors and stuff on it, just like different periods where he was kind of going nuts. Right at, where is it? Vardaman's, like he's doing all great, and then Addie dies and he just crashes. And then at the river, he just starts slowly going down. I think it's a little bit better, but he's not really doing so hot. We just kind of did that for all of them.
So it's emotional states.
Yeah.
And that's these sort of like jagged lines and so on.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, at the end with Vardaman, it's interesting because he obviously is missing his brother and trying to identify like okay, is Darl still my brother, even though Darl does not kind of like live with our family anymore? Is he still our brother, even if he's out of his mind and so on? But at the very end, when he's just eating bananas, I wonder if he's kind of recovered there. If he's just like, well, now I got bananas and now I'm hanging out with Dewey Dell and I can kind of move on from that. But I do get what you're saying, like with the squiggly lines and the emotional states and how these characters' emotional states drive the way that we see time kind of moving in this book, whether it's moving quickly or slowly. Okay, and then last one. So Octavia, I mean, did a PowerPoint. So we're not going to go through the whole thing, but I just want her to explain. So let me see if I can do this. It has different transitions. So she says here, okay, Octavia, explain yours.
Okay, so I didn't know like exactly how to put like a timeline onto the computer, so I just did a Google slide because I feel like you can click on it, and then the transitions from slide to slide each represent something different. And a slide to the right, which will look kind of like this, is it happened directly after the slide before it at some point. So like there's no going back or forward, or like it happened after. And then a flip is a switch to another character, and sometimes at the same moment, and it'll give you like a different perspective. Slowly fading out is going to be the end of a memory or a flashback. And then a cube is like when we don't really know when it is. And the gallery, I don't know how to describe that one, but it's the very last one. So.
Okay, so you can see how this works. So we start with this kind of like flip, which is flip to a new character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the fades, which means that we don't know quite when it happens, or it's like the end of a flashback.
That one was the end of a memory. So the last slide was like her memory.
Okay, so this is flashback occurred as Darl was saying goodbye to Addie, and then we get like a fade to a memory. You get flips to different characters, slides because it happens after, like it's got a cause and effect to it. Addie dies, and this is why Vardaman beats Peabody's horse, right?
Yeah.
And that's why he thinks his mother is a fish. Gosh. So I'm going kind of quickly through this, but I love that. Okay. Got Jewel on the horse. Brett just riding by. You got this one that goes back. A flip. Pictures are great too. Oh yeah, we have to have James Franco as Jewel, right? He plays Jewel in the movie, I think. I need to see that movie. Who directed it? Okay, click quickly through the next few slides. Right.
And that was kind of to like show what the characters might have been seeing, because like when you're going through something traumatic, your mind kind of like blacks out parts of it, or they may have like been drowning or something. I don't know, but that's what I think they would have seen.
Awesome. Yeah, Addie's monologue. Dewey Dell is pregnant. Burning of the barn happens sort of directly after this. Darl is very cool. Is Darl crazy? Change happens suddenly. Okay, awesome. I love that. I love the different like tricks that you use to show how time is passing in an actual like time passing kind of way on the slides. Okay, so ultimately we got to everyone, right? Not if we got to you. Yeah, okay, good. Ultimately, this timeline project, or the shape of the story project, is supposed to show how time is not secure in this book. Lots of characters are sort of like really committed to their version of time. Like Addie, she says, The point of living is to get ready to die. And that's what her father said. And by the end of her life, that's what she's agreeing with. So she thinks of time as this circular structure. Time is just sort of like we spend time here on earth, but we are going to go right back to the beginning. So what's the point of the stuff in between? It's just going to be a loop forever, right? Ants, it seems like, sees time as this clear line. And he's trying to storm through sort of all of the obstacles in this line so that he can accomplish what he wants to accomplish. He doesn't see Addie wanting to be buried with her people as a circle. He sees it as a march forward in time. Let's get this taken care of, and then I can get my new wife, and then we can move forward in time, right? The book, though, is confusing. Which one is the book committed to? Does the book see time as a circular structure? Does the book see time as a spiral? Does the book see time as branching into pieces? Darl, I think, sees time in a much more fluid way than anybody else in the book. Like, he sees that he could go back and he can narrate things he wasn't there for, and he can even change the way we see the past through his style of narration. He can change the way we see sort of his own past by not telling us that he was a veteran until the very end, and then we kind of go back to the beginning again. So Darl has this fluid way of seeing things. My argument, and you don't have to agree with this, but I think the book agrees with Darl about that view of time. I think the book thinks that time can be manipulated through language, and that the way that we think and talk about time can change the way we experience time. But by taking Darl and sticking him on a train and saying, nope, you go away, yes, 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 into the future, it's like the book or all of the family is forcing him on this linear line. I mean, he's literally on train tracks. He's on this linear line. You're going to progress over here, so we don't have to worry about you. And the rest of the family says, we want to commit to thinking about time in a more conventional way. And I think as soon as they do that, as soon as they're like, all right, we got a new mom now, we can just live our lives now in a straight line, I think the book has to be over, because this book, I don't think, believes in that kind of progression. And without a character like Darl, who kind of messes with time, what is this book going to do? So it's interesting, like, Darl kind of like stands in a little bit for the main narrator of the book. There's some arguments, and it's super interesting, that think that Darl is the one who's narrating the whole thing, that he's just getting inside his different families' minds, and it's all coming from Darl's perspective. But at the end here, Cash is the one who is going to start talking, and he's going to start talking for the family. He has a much more practical way of seeing things. Okay, so I'm going to cut class off now, because sitting online for this long is a very hard thing to do. So if you want to, if you got, a little extra energy here at 8:40 in the morning, you could start working on your paper. You could start thinking about what you want to say. Again, I'm going to push that till Wednesday. And the major works assignment is due today. If you just get it in anytime today, it'll be on time. And that's in Skyward now if you already have it turned in. Does anyone have any questions for me before I let you go? Pride and Prejudice, I forgot. Your Pride and Prejudice reading starts next week. So if you were able to come to class and grab a copy of that book, that is awesome. You can read from that. We are reading the first 15 chapters, I think. It's on the schedule. I will send out reminds about it. The first little section. It's a longer book, so we're reading more of it, but it's also a much easier book to read. Who's read Pride and Prejudice before? Only, all right. Okay, so just one of us. It's a joy to read. It's a rom-com, so it's not like As I Lay Dying or King Lear. The reading goes a lot faster. But anyway, so if you don't have that copy of the book, and if you can't get a copy of it, it's everywhere. But if you can't get a copy, you can use a PDF, and I will post the PDF on the prompt that will be due on Monday, so you can get access to it that way. And then as soon as you're back at school, we can get you a real copy. Okay, then, yeah, Ash?
Is the reading, like the first part of the reading, due on Monday, or we're starting it on Monday?
It's due on Monday. Okay. And again, I'll send out the remind with the page numbers and the section numbers and everything. Okay, then Allie, yeah?
What's the thesis speed round thing on Canvas? Is that like just if you missed class today?
That was if you missed class last Friday.
Oh, okay.
It's something we did in class on Friday. So that's for participation points. which we only had 4 people there, right? I can't remember. It was like, yeah, I think it was really small. Yeah. Okay. Stick around if you have more questions. I'll stick around and I can answer them for you, but everybody else, you guys are good to go.